Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm going to be going through my experience playing through Path of Exile 2's Last of the Druid update and Fate of the Vaal League, as well as airing out some of my grievances around the state of Endgame. I will start with Last of the Druids, which introduced the Druid class, allowing you to transform into a bear, werewolf, or wyvern. I joined Team Lizard and leveled a wyvern druid that became an oracle. I leveled that character to level 94. There was another new ascendancy added called Disciple of Varashta. I made a sort of pseudo minion build based around that. This character leveled to 96 and was also a lot of fun to play. And then lastly, I played a crossbow Pathfinder, trying to specialize in evasion and deflection using the new Atziri boots that made stacking deflection really strong. Very happy with that, how that turned out. I think Pathfinder is in a fantastic spot at the moment. I did not play around with the bear forms or wolf forms at all with the druid. I just played with the wyvern, which is pretty awesome, with the massive rend attack that when you stack Tribal Fury, it clears very well. It's really fun to play with. It feels really strong, but a little slow. But you're also kind of this big hulking dragon, so that's kind of to be expected. And clearing maps with this wound up being really fun. You had to manage power charges constantly, which requires you to use Devour, or enemies in Culling Strike use a Wing Blast to get the power charges, stacking up Rage, but for the most part, just clearing maps by using the Rend Giant Cleave attack. And this has made it clear maps pretty well. And you gotta have a power charge to be able to get the lightning infused cleave going on. And I was mainly using this character to clear the big pack size breaches. And it did that fantastically, as this handles thick pack size really well. But when I want to like run around, it's not as quick. But then eventually I added in the wolf form pounce ability to jump, and then you can run a little faster in this form, which was pretty nice. Then I can just switch right back. The transformations from the druid all felt super fluid, really easy to switch between forms. It was all really well done, I think. And while I didn't play with the bear or wolf much, everyone I know who did had a lot of fun doing so. I think the introduction of the druid was very positive, and a lot of players had a lot of fun, even those playing with the new plant-based skills. It opened up a lot of new things to dive into in Path of Exile 2. Then, of the two druid ascendancies, I went with Oracle, which allows you to walk the paths not taken, which adds a bunch of passive nodes to the top left section of the tree, allowing you to further spec into things. I wound up getting this crit damage bonus that was added in here. There was some rage stuff added in that I grabbed. So there's all kinds of new passives that just aren't available on the other ascendancies specific to this one. There's frenzy charges up in the top left. A lot of extra connected paths that you could take. Like these paths got connected from this shape-shifting stuff up here, but it doesn't extend into other parts of the tree. But since there is so much stuff piled into the top left section, there's a lot of different options of things you can do with the Oracle. I never got my fourth ascendancy on this build, as there wasn't anything I really needed. I tried getting this Entwined Realities, which lets you allocate passives in a radius of a keystone. I looked at doing that with the Lord of the Wilds keystone, which allows you to put a scepter in your offhand while wielding a talisman, and it allows you to spec points in like a medium-sized radius around that keystone. But this keystone in particular, it cuts your spirit in half and then almost doubles the cost of reservation skills that use spirit, so it wound up really being costly to use any spirit reservation skills that were not minion based. So in the end, I spec'd out of that, got the lesser harm up here. Enemies' crit chance against you is unlucky, damage of enemies hitting you is unlucky, a nice defensive buff, and then forced outcome, inevitable critical hits, which re-rolls your crit until it actually gives you a successful crit, but lowers the crit multi each time. So back in the map here, every single enemy that I hit is being counted as a critical hit, no matter what. And the damage, if it like has to roll 4 times to be considered a crit, will be way less than if it rolls a crit on the initial hit. So I've stacked a lot of crit damage multiplier to be able to delete some stuff. Now I can stun an enemy, wing blast it, and then I have an oil barrage. That's a really nice single target skill with this. It also consumes power charges, so I've spec'd pretty heavily in the ability to get power charges with the Devour skill and the Wing Blast, using the Wing Blast to make sure I can get power charges up for bosses, and then deleting them with the Oil Barrage, and that skill is fantastic. Now there's another skill that I would have liked to use more, which is the Flame Breath. This skill is fantastic. It also consumes power charges, but with point and click, you can't move while using it. And that was never adjusted. We're about a month into the league, so I was never able to do much with the Flame Breath. Every time I would use it, like with WASD, you can move, but I start moving there and instantly pop out of it every single time. Last, we got a map boss here. I've got the Rin to build up, get the charges, get close. Oh, yep, Manasa's hard to hit. Delete boss with the Oil Breath rather than using the Flame Breath. And it all came down to me was I can't move while using it, while other input methods would allow you to still move. Overall, it was very fun. It was a lot of fun playing around as a dragon, running through maps and using my wings to cleave stuff. I had a ton of fun with this one. Next up is my Disciple of Varashta. CI energy shield based character with a whole slew of different skelly minions. And then I have these 2 little medallions rotating around me that are part of my ascendancy, letting you get command skills for different types of djinns. I have some Kalari skills and some Ruzan skills, and then I got a big boost to energy shield recovery from the 4th teaching and sacred rituals. There's a lot of fun stuff that you can do with the Disciple of Varashta, a lot of recovery stuff with Navira, as well as detonating chilled ground. You can equip a focus while wielding a staff as possibility, LE damage taken from mana before life, time loss jewel radius, also a possibility here. And there's lots of different skills that you can use with each of the djinns. So the ones that I'm using are these blades that you throw on the ground that erupt upward. That's Kalari's Brutality. There's Kalari's Deception, which is this big AoE blast. And if you cast them repeatedly, you get more uses out of it, because I only have 2 uses of Kalari's Brutality, but there's kind of 3 different launches there, and there's only 3 uses of the Deception. I ended up getting like 5 of those out, and then a 6th once the cooldown went. Then there's Ruzan's Trap, throws a sword in the ground. I hit a pillar, so it didn't actually work. Puts a bunch of these little traps on the ground that erupt into little tornadoes when an enemy steps on it, and Ruzan's Brand places a brand on an enemy that will detonate. And then all of the Skelly minions, like, while I kind of went in on upgrading and putting as many support gems in here as possible. I wound up being pretty strapped on attributes after a while, but I got all of these different skeletons because it buffs the skill called Muster. This support gem giving you more damage for each different reviving minion you have summoned recently. Almost all of these skeletons here are only around for the purpose of buffing the muster support that I'm using on my command skills. I personally am not a massive enjoyer of minion builds. I don't like builds where all you do is like this, you run around, the minions do all the fighting for you, and it's a little showcase of what my minions are actually doing. Not much. And then I have this unearth skill that can also summon a bunch of these little crawly things. But what I'm mostly doing my damage with is with the command skills. You get the fire tornadoes, and it's been a while since I played on this, but throwing these traps down, it's hard to keep an eye on like what are actually enemies and what are my minions, and Tim Chains makes you slow, and I'm doing most of my damage by using these command skills. And the Kalari skills build up critical weakness on enemies. And since all these are cooldown based, you kind of have to rotate through them. And I am playing a minion build that I have to push buttons. I have to do things. And that's made this Disciple of Varashta build probably the most fun minion build I've ever played in Path of Exile 1 or 2, because it was a bit more active, and I wasn't just standing around and letting all the minions do the damage for me. I have to constantly be using skills to deal damage, but I got to build a minion build to go along with that, and then I'm building up all this critical weakness on enemies to scale crit and make my minions crit and spec into as much crit chance for minions and stuff as possible with an Omen Scepter. And this was a lot of fun to put together as well, constantly having to try and maximize the usage of Spirit, getting reservation efficiency of skills where you can, and then you need to stack as much levels of minion skills as possible. You got to have 2 on the helmet, try and get 3 on the amulet. You get the desecration +2 on the focus. I only got +3 on my scepter, never got a +4 there, so it could be upgraded. But in the end, most of my minion skills are level 30, 31, 29, 30. So they're really tanky. And then with enough optimization, there's this node on the tree making your minions gigantic, but reduces their reservation efficiency. This gives them 20% more life, damage, and size. So all my minions are bigger. There is a support gem that does that, but I was eventually able to make it so all my minions had that, opening up more support gems for me. And that's kind of a final bit of optimization that was really fun to make on this. Clearing with this build was kind of messy, as I've showcased here, but defensively I have 9,000 energy shield, and I'm able to actually kill things. It's just not pretty, I would say. Like, there's stuff going on everywhere. It's hard to keep track of what is actually going on. And also, shrines don't really have much of an effect, because all my damage is minions. This damage is extra cold that I'm getting isn't really affecting them at all in any way. So shrines wound up not being super useful for this build. And here we've got a Rogue Exile floating around somewhere. I have an issue with Rogue Exiles currently, because I don't know where this Rogue Exile is. It died. It was literally right on top of me. Enemies, when you hit them and they've taken damage, have a health bar. You can toggle it in the menu. But with a Rogue Exile, I run away for a second. Energy shield just pops right back. Energy shield feels very strong. But something that has like a big health bar like that, I can never keep track of where the Rogue Exile is, especially when I have all these extra minions and things going on. It is a bit rough in that regard. And this boss here isn't going to be much of a challenge, but you can see I'm building up with the Malice. That is critical weakness. That is extra base critical strike chance for me and all my minion skills. I was actually able to put the passives in here for boss difficulty on this build, do the tier 3 breach encounter, and this build can actually delete some bosses. When you stack up that critical weakness, you get the brands down under the enemy. This skill does a lot of damage. And plus, you have all your minions all attacking one thing. And then all of these skeletons have their own different command skills as well. One that I was using was called Shattering Roar. Lets out a little war cry that intimidates enemies. Archer has a gas arrow. There's an ice armor thing. Coats all of your minions in ice. That does reflect damage. There's a bunch of different stuff with all the different skelly minions. I never did anything with specters, but this build came together very well, was very strong, and when I went into this build, I was thinking, minion build, this isn't going to be super great, but the way command skills are implemented, even with the other minions, with their different abilities, this Enraged, he's got extra damage now, and all that, I've got clerics that'll constantly be healing enemies, and it's hard to keep track of all the different ones. I've got a little thunder skelly, frost skellies, and archer, 2 different melee ones. The skellies has a lot going on there, but like I was mentioning, it's all just to buff the support gems so that I'm getting more damage out of my actual skills. I was delightfully surprised with the Disciple of Varashta. Then lastly is my crossbow Pathfinder, using Permafrost bolts with a swap into fragmentation rounds to shoot frozen enemies. That's pretty much it. I have a mark that I'm using and a fulminating concoction to shock enemies. I also have these little ice shards that I can throw on the ground that can do some damage, but this is more of a gimmick skill than anything else. It has proven. Pathfinder gives you the option of a concoction skill that uses mana flask charges. I went with fulminating, make big shock out of this. I got sustainable practices. 50% of evasion rating also grants elemental damage reduction. I believe that works kind of like armor does. Estimated elemental damage reduction against hits with the evasion rating that I have. It lists that in armor. So if I had a bunch of armor and I had armor applies to elemental damage, that's kind of what it's giving me, but it's based on the evasion rating, which I have stacked up quite a bit. 50% of that evasion rating be like 12,000 armor applying to LE damage. Not an insane amount, but it's a nice bonus. And then here, your speed's unaffected by slows. I took that. This ascendancy behind it gives less movement speed penalty when using skills while moving, and you cannot be heavy stunned while sprinting. So that means with the Pathfinder, you could just sprint around the map, and you can never get knocked down out of it, which is pretty cool. But I wound up really not needing that. I took a Path of the Sorceress. It gives you an option that you can start putting points in up here or in the warrior starting location to just kind of warp across the tree if needed. But I really just wanted the 5 passive points that I used to get a bunch of Cold Pit. I think this is the first build that I've used all of my weapon set passives as well. Since Fulminating Concoction requires you to have your main hand empty, I'm making as much use of the weapon swap as possible. I got a shield here to give +2 lightning skills. It's really the only thing that's doing. But I was able to get a ton of shock magnitude, shock duration, chance for shock. Up here's a bunch of chance for shock, shock magnitude, trying to build up as big as shocks as possible. Down here, getting the lucky lightning damage, extra lightning damage, some lightning pin, chance of shock, all that. And then the other weapon set passes were used for the crossbow stuff and some freeze build up, the cold pin, as none of that is needed for the fulminating concoction. Now this is definitely not the highest damage build that I've played, but oh, it's satisfying to just run around with like a machine gun, shotgun, freezing everything. Like I can freeze everything. And then I can shock it, 72% shock. With the fulminating concoction. That is insane. And then, against frozen enemies, fragmentation rounds deal way more damage than normal enemies. So, against the frozen target, I can swap to the fragmentation rounds, bop it once, it consumes the freeze, and does a ton of damage. That's pretty much what I've got going on here. Freezing Mark If you freeze an enemy with the mark on it, gives you damage as extra cold. Freezing an enemy with Permafrost bolts with Ice Bite gives damage as extra cold. I have a Heat Shiver, which gives 1% of cold damage as extra fire per 1% chill magnitude. And to make sure that's all cold damage that I'm getting as extra, I'm using Embitter on the Permafrost bolts as well. Getting cold damage as extra chaos with Toll's Stillness. That's why I made this build. This is the gem that dropped off of my Zesht that I was farming for, and I built a skill to try and use this lineage support gem. Nothing else fancy going on here except for the Atziri boots. I got a max roll on the deflection equal to 60% evasion rating and -6 to the damage prevented from deflection. That dropped like that on my first Atziri kill. So I worked that into this build, wound up getting tons of evasion and deflection. I've hit an enemy recently, so that gave me another 110% evasion rating, but 76% chance to take 43% less damage from hits if it makes it through the 74% evasion. Ended up feeling really strong, and I'm chilling everything, I'm slowing everything down, and it just felt really good to play. The character just gets a bunch of speed, as there's a lot of movement speed and stuff on the ranger section of the tree, and like most clearing, it's simple. It's, for most intents and purposes, it's pretty much a one-button build for clear, and then when you need to delete a single target, you need to start adding in other things. And even while clearing, I can throw a mark down to get that damage as extra cold. I'm getting onslaught from my weapon, and I've got a really big Herald of Ice juiced here. This is probably the favorite build of mine that I've played in Path of Exile 2. I have absolutely loved this. I'm a big fan of the evasion stacking playstyle going back to Path of Exile 1, though there you got spell suppression, here you got deflection. It kind of works in a similar way, and Pathfinder giving you that extra bonus against elemental damage made it feel pretty tanky against just about all hits that are not physical damage, and being a life-based character without having energy shield as a buffer on top of things, it felt really good to play, and the ability to just freeze anything and everything. Here we can shock, swap, and bop that with the fragmentation rounds. That's kind of the process that goes through to a single target, which we'll get to at the end of this map. I really don't need it to kill a rare to like go all out on everything. And then since I'm using Embitter in my Permafrost bolts setup, the damage as lightning that I'm getting from the shrine that I just picked up is being converted to damage as extra cold, further helping me shatter stuff and the big freezes. But Permafrost bolts at level 26, 600% more magnitude of chills, 600% more freeze buildup. I didn't have to use any freeze buildup stuff in the links to make it actually freeze, because it just does that very, very well, all on its own. And I'll turn the shrine off for this boss. We'll mark it. Then I need to hit it a few times to freeze it, shock it. I missed the shock, swap, and then burst the freeze with the fragmentation rounds. That was one little setup of the skill, did about 1 million damage there. And then we do it again, build up the freeze, use the shock, swap, bop. And that's how single target works with this build, and that is, it's so satisfying to do. To clear maps just with this like crazy shotgun spraying ice everywhere. It has some weird projectile aiming when stuff gets really close to you. Even if you're like trying to target it, it'll really easily miss if stuff's really close to you. But otherwise, I love this build. And then with this build, as well as both the others, the in-game grind is what really kind of pushed me to level a new build and like making me want to take a step back from things, which I'll get into just in a minute. But let's talk about the Fate of the Vaal League mechanic here. Going into the league, I was very, very excited about this league mechanic. I like the idea of placing rooms, getting synergies, getting upgrades and stuff. You get a bunch of these cool currency things. This in solo self-found environments gives you a much easier source to get lineage supports, as well as the high level runes. If you didn't have the temple, these things like never drop. I think I dropped 2 or 3 the entire league. But when I look in my stash, I have all these high-level runes, most of which I got from this temple. That was fantastic. Though at the very start, it left a pretty sour taste in my mouth, because at the beginning, you weren't able to just put any room and connect to any of the reward rooms. You kind of had to get a path to it, but now they all connect together. That's been patched. And then originally, like, portaling out of the temple could, like, reset your temple, like break your instance, and it was really tedious to deal with. And then at one point they made it so you couldn't actually portal out of the temple. You had to actually go walk out the front door. And it makes a little bit of sense to me that you can't portal out across a time portal, because when you go into the temple, you're going back in time the same way as Act 3. When you portal there, you have to then walk back through the giant gate portal that allowed you to go back in time. So it kind of makes a little bit of sense to me that the portal, you can't just like warp back to where you were. You have to walk back in through the time portal, then you can warp to your checkpoints, and sure. The thing I was next most excited about with the temple was the idea of fighting one of the most legendary bosses in the Path of Exile universe at Ziri. It took me many days to even get to my first at Ziri, as you have to go to the Architect, fight it, a bunch of rooms get deleted, and then you have to path all the way up to at Ziri again, but you also have to path to a key that gets placed, and it winds up being really tedious. But then they've since started giving more crystals in your maps to make it more approachable to come and work on the temple. And then you don't actually have to connect a path to the Architect. You see, if I place this room here, this will connect to the Architect, and then I can run up here, fight the Architect. But still, like if I were to have a room that I was able to place up here in front of at Ziri, I can't path to at Ziri with that room, which I think has its own issues. And that used to be the case for these reward rooms, but I can place this room here, this will connect to these, I can go run in here, get these rewards, those rooms will go away, sure. But as this league has gone on, while we've gotten small little upgrades to things here and there, most of the changes that have come for the league mechanic have revolved around the min-maxed giant tunnels that players are building in the temples, where what I most desiring from the temple is to farm the at Ziri. I want to fight at Ziri. I've fought at Ziri 6 times this league. 4 of those came in the past 2 days, and then the prior 18 days of playing the league, I had 2 at Ziri. So it has become easier to get to at Ziri as less rooms get deleted when you're not fighting an Architect, but that also has issues. So if I put this room here, well, it wouldn't let me put it here. I'll put it here, put this room here. This poses a big problem that I've seen numerous players having, is that, let's say I don't fight the Architect and my path ends up getting blocked off. Let's say I have the key. Let's say this is the key. I could connect rooms to here, but I can't connect rooms off of these already placed rooms to get to at Ziri, or if my Architect was up on this tile, it's really hard to get to that. And if I actually have to connect a path to at Ziri, there's currently, on this temple layout, no way for me to do so at all. So I have to rely on certain rooms getting removed to allow me to actually continue to path towards that Ziri with my next batch of rooms that I can place. This has made it really frustrating for players to make it to at Ziri, let alone when you get to at Ziri, you have 1 attempt. And going into that fight, never having seen it before, there's some crazy mechanics going on in there. And if you fail it, you just fail completely. You have to completely rebuild up the temple, go through the Architect, path to the key, and then get up to at Ziri. It can be really, really time-consuming to fight a boss like at Ziri that a lot of Path of Exile players were really excited to fight in this league, and then like one little thing that you've never seen before kills you and you just like, it's done. I know of several players personally that how'd that happen to them? They finally, after days of work, made it to be able to fight at Ziri, made a mistake in the fight that they had never seen before, died to at Ziri, saw their progress just all vanish, temple reset, and they're just like, this is dumb, I'm done with the league. I feel like that was a massive misstep in creating this league, is the once you make it to Atziri, you have one attempt, and failing once just takes it all away. Because it can take many hours. Even if you know what you're doing, it'll take me like 4 hours for one attempt at Atziri. But it took me so long to finally make it to Atziri that once I got to Atziri, my character was so geared up and leveled that I deleted Atziri in seconds. I personally have never struggled with the fight because my character, by the time I was able to get to Atziri, was already super powerful and could just delete a boss with around 2 million HP. But I've also heard from players that have the situation that I was talking about where you get your path blocked off completely and you want to fight the architect or you want to fight Atziri and you're unable to get the pieces you need to path to the architect or Atziri. The architect is easier because you can connect any room, but since you can't for Atziri, it can make it nearly impossible to like randomly get these rooms that you need to get removed to get the path to go. So that you can actually get the right tiles and then path to Atziri. It's really tedious, but I think it would be much better if you could use your knowledge of how different rooms can chain together and use those to path to Atziri. Let's fight the boss that should be the like core component of this league mechanic. Many players have been requesting a way to just reset their temple. I've heard about players in this situation where like I can't get my stuff to actually path to Atziri, and they just leveled a new character as a way to deal with it because there was no way to actually get it to fix. Because if my path ended right here and all these were just like piled up rooms, it could take like 10 15 temples to actually that you didn't place any rooms and you're just waiting for stuff to get deleted, and I think that is really bad, and I don't think you should punish players for failing a fight that they've never seen before. A lot of players wanted to go into Atziri blind, being that it's this Path of Exile 1 boss that's been around for over 10 years. I went into it blind myself, and it makes me think back to the Abyss mechanic with Kulamak. If you make it to the final phase of Kulamak, you can fight that boss until you win, even if it takes hours. My first encounter with the Vessel of Kulamak's final phase took me like an hour and a half, and I had to learn the mechanics of that fight, and you can warp across the rooms, and there's these Djinn balls that home in on you. You got to kind of place those away from the boss, especially I was a melee character at the time. That was really exciting for me, actually, to grind out that boss fight. And it was difficult. It was hard to do. And it was really satisfying when I completed it. You don't get that with Atziri, and I am kind of baffled by that decision. So the things that I'm looking for here. If you make it to Atziri, you can fight Atziri till you win. Any path can be used to connect to Atziri, and that would fix a lot of issues with struggling to get your path to connect to Atziri. And or a way to delete your temple or delete rooms on your temple more freely if you want to keep the stipulation that you actually have a path connect to Atziri's chamber. There needs to be a way to unbrick your temple. And then the last thing here, I have one of 42 total crystals. I've thrown in another map here. We've got the Vaal crystal thing here. Once I clear all these enemies, we'll have this text box pop up here. And it says Energized Beacons 1 of 6. And once I reach 6, it'll always say 6 of 6. It'll never tell me how many of these crystals that I have stored up, even though I have a max of 42. It baffles me that change has not made it into the game, but there's been countless little nitpicky changes with regard to the in-game min-maxing of the temple, which has nothing to do with fighting the boss. It has everything to do with stacking as many rooms as possible in the temple to boost rewards. They got buffed because players were saying that the temple was unrewarding, so it got buffed more than it needed to be. Then players figured out how to min-max the temple, and then changes were being made because they figured out how to min-max the temple. But the basic player's experience, I feel like, got left behind in all of that. Like, I could be sitting at 31 of my 42 crystals right now, and this will say 6 of 6 every single time. Like, now I have 2 more. In the next map, it'll say 3 of 6. And that in particular kind of frustrates me because, like, I'm never able to, like, keep track of how many of these rooms I've built up. So now here it says 3 of 42. Like, why doesn't it just tell me 3 of 42 in my map? And this league has received lots of little changes as the league has gone on. The last big patch came in the week before Christmas. This lowering the number of rooms that gets destabilized from the Architect and Atziri, kind of doubling down on that issue that I was explaining, with players bricking their temples. And this is the patch that buffed a lot of the different rooms, a bunch of added unique enemies into the temple, and then we've had just a slew of hot fixes slowly coming in. Some of these having lots of comments on it, as there's just like trying to make little changes here and there, as by this point a lot of players were trying to make this long tunnel thing in the temple, and a lot of the changes were being related around that. And it's like, oh, we'll make a fix, so reducing the number of destabilized rooms, and then eventually walking that change back. And I'm seeing all these changes come in, and none of them were addressing the like core complaints that I had or I was hearing from members of my community. Like, there's constant fixes based around the min-maxed in-game temple farm rather than increasing and making better the base experience for the majority of the player base. This one disabled quickly farming temples crystals up, but also gave more crystals in in-game maps, which helped things. I'm definitely happy that the changes were continuing to come in. I just think they were a little more mistargeted than they should have been. Yep, this is another change to trying to farm temples, crystals, to crazy stack your temple up. That's not everything though. Like, fixed a lot of client crashes and things. A lot of good stuff was being fixed behind the scenes, and while the game is in early access, I definitely think things like this should be happening. Like, constantly be working on things, constantly fix things. The game is in early access. I don't want to continue to play the game in a broken state. If you have the changes, push them out. Like, keep making the game better and better and better. I think that's been good. Even over the holiday season, like, there were still changes trying to be made. And now, because of all the changes related around the giant temple tunnel, I feel like a lot of players coming into this league mechanic now are thinking about that's what to expect out of building a temple, whereas the core thing should have been farming Atziri, farming the boss, farming the architect, getting the reward rooms, leveling up a couple rooms, getting some of the cool new Vaal currency stuff that you can do. For me, it was really exciting to like get the Atziri boots, and then through continuing to farm Atziri, get more of these boots that I tried to use cultivation orbs and upgrade them, make them into crazier uniques. For me, it is like getting those runes, getting those lineage gems, getting these currency orbs, getting the boss drops off Atziri that was always more exciting to me with regard to the temple. And I love the idea of double corrupting items, double corrupting skill gems. You can destroy an item to get its augments out of it. A lot of cool things coming from these currencies, and which you can get by like stacking up your temple with a lot of rooms as well. But these also can drop from the chest rewards after defeating Atziri, which is also really nice. I just wish it wasn't as painful for players to go fight Atziri and experience the fight for themselves without that pressure of do or die. And if you fail, you don't get to try again for potentially many hours of gameplay. I also think that had this league launched like a week earlier, before a lot of the Grindy Gear Games staff like were on holiday breaks. This league could have gotten a lot better a lot more quickly. It happened with this league as well as when early access first launched, that there's this massive period with some big glaring issues and no like big changes coming. And like we knew that. We knew there's probably 2 to 3 weeks that we're not going to get any big changes, and we saw the trickle of hotfixes come in, which was more than I was expecting, honestly. I have a lot of trust in Grinding Gear Games to continue improving Path of Exile 2, continue making it better, as I've seen what they've done over the past 12 plus years of Path of Exile 1. But then lastly here, I want to talk about Endgame. There are a few big issues here that haven't been fixed yet. Area contains the Ammired Fury. The Ammired Fury does not spawn in these zones. Still, a month into the league. This was your way of guaranteeing that you could get a fracturing orb. If you found one of these and you killed it, you get a fracturing orb. But the Ammired Fury just doesn't spawn in the map. I did it twice. There's lots and lots of bug reports about it. Thus, I marked this one and never completed it here in hopes that we'd see that fix come in, which still, as of now, hasn't. And a lot of the talk recently is with regard to Abyss. It seems to me like it is bugged. I've been farming Abyss almost the entire league, trying to farm Omens of Abyssal Echoes and Omens of Light. Doing so by using Unholy Influence, trying to increase the number of Abyssal monsters to have Lichborn modifiers. Enemies with Lichborn modifiers, the Aminabu's Vase, Kurgle's Last Gasp, or Ulamon's Legion, have the ability to drop the specialized omens of Dextral Necromancy, Sinistral Necromancy, allowing you to desecrate prefixes or suffixes, as well as specific ones for guaranteeing Ulamon, Kurgle, or Aminamu modifiers. And you can see here, I have 43 Omens of the Liege that drop off of an Aminamu influenced enemy. I have 5 of the ones from Ulamon and 3 of the ones from Kurgle. 43, 5, and 3. Based on what I've seen, when you have enemies showing up from the Abyss with those Lich modifiers on them, the Ulamon's Legion and Kurgle's Last Gasp enemies just don't drop omens. And with the Aminamu one, it creates this giant circle that you have to be standing in with the enemy in order to deal damage to it, or if the enemy is outside of its little void circle, you can damage it outside of its void. But if you kill the enemy inside of the circle, it only drops Omens of the Leech. And this was happening in the Abyss League last league as well. We piled up tons and tons of these Omens of the Leech. We've now found out that if you kill the Aminamu enemy outside of its void circle, that is the best way to actually get these better omens. The Omens of Abyssal Echoes, I don't have any of those. You get Omens of Putrefaction and the Omens of Light that allows you to remove a desecrated mod from an item using an annulment orb, and then you can try again, which is kind of the last thing needed to finalize a piece of gear that you need to have +2 minion skills that only comes from desecrated modifier crafting on an item. Never once this league have I gotten an Omen of Light to drop myself. Even trying to wait my Abyss to spawn Aminamu monsters and then get them to come out of the Abyss with the Aminamu modifier and then lure them out of this void that they constantly respawn after a duration and kite them. It's super, super tedious. But then a lot of times you'll kill it and it's like, boom, here's 2 Omens of Abyssal Echoes. It's like, well, okay, but why don't the Ulamon or Kurgle enemies also have the ability to, like, drop the omens? The only times I've gotten omens to drop off Ulamon's Legion or Kurgle's Last Gasp have come from Abyssal Depths. The enemies that come out in maps just do not drop omens at all, ever. And I've farmed them enough to know, like, they just don't drop. There's something up with it. And those are kind of just the minor things to me. The Immured Fury and whatever's going on with this Omen stuff. It's a bit of an issue when you're trying to like actually craft up and finalize gear in in-game. Now, I will say that I quite liked the initial push on the League to get my Atlas passives by clearing the corruption, sure, but you can only run magic tablets until you complete 3 of the citadels and fight the Arbiter of Ash, and then upon defeating the Arbiter, then you can make rare tablets, which is awesome and all, but then you have to deal with this mess. And I'm constantly looking here, well, I need Abyss tablets, but I also want it to have rarity of drops on it, and then I gotta look through all these, and it's like, okay, I can pick some of these out, and then you kind of want to run these in batches of 10, and so I can grab one of these, but then I want one that has like irradiation, but we also want rarity on that to make sure things are good here. Yeah, there's one with rarity. Then I want a ritual one. Oh, but I like have no ritual tablets in here at all. Okay, here's one, a ritual one with rarity. This one only has 6 uses on it. So then I can go to my map device, and we're gonna say run a map here. We want to run all these tablets, but then after 6 maps, I'm gonna have to like do the micromanaging, and then these ones are only gonna have 4 uses on them. And micromanaging the tablets ends up being a real pain to do. Not to mention that there is also an issue with the ritual precursor tablets in the way that ritual precursor tablets just don't drop as often. I've gotten more normal precursor tablets from ritual than I have ritual precursor tablets. You can only get the ritual precursor tablets to drop off the enemies that spawned inside of the ritual circle before you start the encounter. That's the only time they'll drop. If a precursor tablet drops from killing enemies in the encounter that drop after the encounter is over, they're never ritual tablets. They're always precursor tablets. And if those precursor tablets I got from that dropped as ritual tablets, I think that's in a much better situation. But ritual is pretty mandatory when it comes to like trying to craft gear, as that's where all the like big omens come from, and you really need to use these tablets to boost what you can get out of the rituals. Getting increased tribute gained, more chances at omens, and being able to target that stuff. You really need these tablets. And I think beating the Arbiter and then gaining the ability to get rare ritual tablets was cool. I'm kind of a fan of that. As well as if you go to fight the Uber Arbiter with these like upgraded fragments, and you get those by putting enough points in this tree that the way forward shows up, then you can start getting the Uber key fragments to drop from your Citadel bosses. If you try and go fight the Uber Arbiter and fail, rather than just being done, you can respawn, try the fight again, but the second time it is the normal Arbiter fight, so you don't feel like you missed out on your attempt at beating the boss by attempting the Uber one, because with all this stuff allocated and getting the Uber keys, you're not going to get the normal ones. And it also takes a lot of time to go across the Atlas and get your citadels and build up the fragments to even go after the Arbiter. But then when you get to the Arbiter, you get to attempt it until you beat it. And even if it takes you all day, you can keep grinding out that fight and try and learn its mechanics and get good at it. I actually would like to see that same thing happen with the higher tiers of the other fights as well. It feels really bad if you build up 150 splinters, you only get one attempt at the hardest difficulty of the boss, and since it is the hardest version of the boss, if you fail, you lose it all. But I could have farmed the boss 3 times at level 1 and guaranteed beat it, because you can attempt it as many times as you want. I think it would be cool if, like, you fail the hardest version of the boss, it drops it down a tier like the Arbiter does, and then you can continue to retry it. So you don't get nothing from your time investment in endgame. But then, if you want to run 3 tablets in a map, you have to have 6 mods on the map. But if you put 6 mods on the map, you can't revive ever. So you're making the map super hard so you can get the bonuses from having 3 tablets in here to try and farm the content, but one small mistake and then you lose all the charges on the tablets, you lose 10% of your XP, you lose all of the remaining content in the map, and you have to complete that map again without any of the content in it, causing a big waste of time, a loss of resources, a loss of XP, and massive frustration. And once I got to the higher levels of my character, I felt more and more, as I'm trying to chase better and better upgrades, I really need to have 3 of these tablets in here if I'm trying to get omens to drop off of the abyss monsters. I need rarity on all of my tablets. I need as much rarity as possible on all of my gear. In fact, I used this ring on all 3 of my characters this league because it had some resistances and a ton of rarity on it. It really feels like rarity ends up becoming the most valuable stat on gear, as does plus level of whatever you're playing, melee, projectile, minions, or spell skills on your amulet, as well as on your weapon. But on a weapon, if you don't get the plus level, you can use essences and get something workable. It's not as bad in terms of weapons, but with amulets, any amulet that doesn't have plus level of skills on it feels bad. And then you're constantly looking for places to cut defenses to get more rarity, because that's the only way you're going to get perfect stuff to drop. You're getting better uniques, you're getting like the higher value currencies, getting higher value omens, and you want to stack as much rarity as possible, so you wind up being more incentivized to stack all this stuff in here to get more rarity on your maps, to put more mods on them, and then you make one little mistake, you sprint it a little bit too long, you get knocked down, your character's dead, you lose it all. That is not fun. It feels terrible, and it ends up pushing me away from the game. The progression up to that point all feels good to me, but then you get to this point and you're punished for trying. And this has been a contentious debate since Path of Exile 2 launched, was with regard to the number of portals. A lot of us from Path of Exile 1 enjoy the chill grind that comes in the endgame, just grinding maps over and over and over. It's cool. Sometimes you make mistakes, you die to some crazy monster that spawned. Okay, let's go back in there and try and kill it. Like, I don't mind the fact that if you die to the boss, you refight the boss at full HP. I really like that. You should have to beat the boss rather than going back in and continuing it from the HP value you left off with. But just being, like, shut out of everything when I've got all this ritual in the map, I've got Abyss spewing out, trying as hard as I can to like boost what's coming from Abyss. Plus I have all the other things, a wisp spawns in the map, there's an essence, a strong boxes, all this stuff I have to do deathless. And it ends up just putting this sour taste in my mouth that like I'd rather go play Path of Exile 1, which is what I'm about to do, honestly. I'm making this video as I feel like I'm done with the league. I don't want to continue to push in-game. I don't want to level a new character because I know I'm going to end up at this same place and the campaign takes forever to get through. I feel like a lot of the exhaustion that I feel from the in-game would be taken away by giving the portals back. Even if it was only 2. I'm not joking. Like, the ability to fail once and then, like, try again is something I am greatly desiring. But if I put a 5-mod map in here, I lose a mechanic to add to my map. And these maps, like, can take 10 to 15 minutes to clear sometimes. 10 to 15 minutes of gameplay with 0 errors in a game that is capable of just one-shotting you out of the blue when you're putting these mods in the map. It just doesn't feel right. And I end up being more frustrated than enjoying myself once I get to the end of the endgame grind. But then, in PoE 1 as well as PoE 2, you can roll up a bunch of maps. I have a bunch of maps that I had been going through. I've got 7 maps left that I have rolled that I'm comfortable going in. But I can never just open this up, throw in a map, I want to run that map. No. I constantly have to be looking around this giant map to like, okay, I want to try and go in this direction towards one of these citadels maybe, or I want to try and find a corruption. And you wind up with all this downtime between maps constant, like, and this gets worse the more time you spend because you have more and more area cleared on your atlas, trying to like look around for all these specific things, and there's no search bar here. Yes, you can put bookmarks, but you're limited to 16 of them. So if I wanted to mark my Untainted Paradise, like, it'd be cool if I could search, find Untainted Paradise maybe, or find my Omens of Corruption, the Eye of the Storm, rather than constantly have to look around at all these maps and like, maybe if I do this one, I can go up here. And so much of me just wants to throw in the map and go. But there's all these little side quests that you're embarking on the Atlas, looking for the unique maps, trying to get the citadels. And I do think it's cool. You find these biomes and you go after the citadels. You can do the corrupted maps, or you can do the Nexus and farm the cleansed maps, trying to push for different things. But that, in line with micromanaging tablets, like I just mentioned, it gets exhausting when I'm just trying to like throw in the next map and farm monsters. Like there's like all this extra nonsense that I constantly have to be thinking about and micromanaging when it comes to just naturally running maps in the endgame. And then you go through all that process. It's like, okay, I find the map that I want to do. I got all the mods on my map. I can run all of my tablets, and then you die, and then all that effort is just for nothing. And for lack of better words, I hate it. I actually hate it. And if I were able to go back on the map, it would really take a lot of the sting out of failure. But in its current state, like that's the biggest thing driving me away. I think if I had all my portals, it would feel a little better, but you'd still have to deal with this pathing around this endless wasteland, trying to find all these things. Like, say if I wanted to try and find a Jade Isles, like I gotta path around here and I'm looking at the edges of my map, looking for all these things. Like, oh, here's one. I can see there's things going here. Now I find this location and I can try to do this, but okay, there's here, but oh wait, I didn't grab a map from my stash. Okay, let me go get a map. Okay, go to my stash, I grab a map, I go back here. Oh, it moved me to the last map I did. I forgot to mark that location. I gotta go find it again, which was all the way back down here, close to the beginning, somewhere. It was down here. Yeah. Here's the location. Now I can open this up and I can put my map in. Oh wait, that one doesn't have 6 mods on it. I can't run on my tablets. You see what I'm getting at here? Like, that is so exhausting when you just want to open a map and fight monsters, right? There's all this little tedious nonsense that you have to do. And then it's like, okay, I got the 6 mod map. I can run all my things. Let me play the game at that point. Let me run into, oh, the Abyss, Spit Out, Shadewalker, Undying Will. I cannot deal damage to any of the monsters, and oh no, I died. Let me go back and try again to delete that nonsense, because, like, just yesterday, that happened to me. There was an Undying Will enemy. I got stuck in a location trying to, like, target down that enemy. I died. I lose my map. It's frustrating. I want to turn the game off. That's not good. And then, like, I outlined there, that's the core of my frustration with Endgame. The micromanagement, the punishment for death being so severe, and that's not really mentioning the Atlas tree. I spent most of this league running with every single essence node spec'd into my tree. I respec'd it last time for shrines because I was just over it. I would go like 3+ map streaks with all this additional chance to contain essences and never see an essence in my map. There's no guarantee to get an essence. And it frustrated me to no end having all this essence stuff spec'd in, and then I'd open a map and there's 3 Asmeri spirits in the map and no essence being spec'd into all the essence things. It drove me nuts. I also, like, I don't like how the whole Atlas tree works in general. In Path of Exile 1, like, I can guarantee an essence in my map from my Atlas tree. All this, like, what, close to 500% chance for essences you might be able to get in your maps, and it still just doesn't happen. Feels bad. You know what else feels really bad? When you level a new character and you get to endgame and you throw your first map in and you have all of this sort of meaningless boss difficulty that doesn't do too much to add to things. Areas with powerful map bosses contain a shrine. That is only the map bosses that have the powerful map boss icon on them. All of these maps right in here don't have that. You have to run a specific tablet in those maps to get that bonus, making the map boss much more difficult. But on this character I just leveled, I got the endgame, I forgot to respec those nodes, I go into endgame, my first T1 map had a powerful boss in it that had like 4 million HP in a T1 map, because of these nodes being spec'd. And I don't know that it's, I want this to have to progress this with each character, because I definitely don't want to have to do that with all of these other things. But at the same time, like, I would also love to be like, I'm trying to farm Abyss right now. I don't need all this Breach stuff spec'd in. Let me spec into more other things. Like, I kind of wish all of these other things here were stuff on the actual Atlas tree, and that there was some kind of more goal to getting your Atlas passive points. I don't know if it is the right move. I suggested it before. I think in a very similar fashion to how you get your Atlas passive points to PoE 1, you should have to go defeat, say, a powerful map boss in each of the different map tile sets to get your Atlas passives. And then in the end, it might become a big scavenger hunt where it's like, well, I haven't killed a map boss in an Asmarian Ranges map, and you have this little extra hunt to go search for all these different map tile sets, and it provides more of a progression to getting your Atlas tree. I would love to see it and give it a shot and see how that would work, rather than kind of just chasing corruption nexuses at different tiers. And then all this arbitrary chance to contain content that you don't really have a great grasp on what it's actually doing, when on a tablet you can also get like 100% chance to contain essences, but you can also get a guaranteed essence off the tablet. Like, I can go to my massive thing here and I want essence. Okay, but then let's see here. This one contains additional essence. This one has increased chance to contain essences, but you can have 1,000% chance to contain essences and still not get an essence in your map. So I need the specific wording here. Additional essence. Oh, I only have 3 of those. But if I put all 3 of these tablets in my map device, well, then that way I can get 3 essences in the map. That's also pretty rare, isn't it? Because all these other tablets have chance to contain essences. I really hate micromanaging all these tablets, for real. Scarabs is so much simpler, but also the amount of juice you can get out of tablets is cool. Like, I got a love-hate relationship with the tablets. And then at the same time, why can't I, like, make the sacrifice in my shrines, for example, to further spec into the additional packs of Wildwood monsters? The rituals spawning additional monsters might increase my chance of getting ritual tablets, and then get the toughness and like fully spec into ritual. But right now we can't. So I would love to see it like a big Atlas passive tree rework where you have like a more tangible like scavenger hunt goal kind of thing. I don't know if it would turn out better than the Nexus thing, which gives you 5 Atlas points per one of those you do. You have to keep finding those. It's not too hard to do. I just think it would be more satisfying to say, well, I've completed all these different map tile sets. You would need a way to track that. The Atlas in PoE 1 definitely keeps track of all that for you. Hey, I found an Asmarian Ranges map. Cool. I could go do that one, but it doesn't have powerful map boss. If it was attached to powerful map boss, I need an Overseer's tablet to throw into it. And then once you have so many certain Atlas passives, you have to keep increasing a tier of maps to be able to unlock new passives. I think that would be so much more fun than hunting down the Corrupted Nexus, honestly. And you could have Atlas passives tied to getting all these special maps and then the citadels and whatnot. I think it would add a lot more meaning to all these different things. You could also keep the unique maps as a Atlas passive for completing all the different ones. There's also all kinds of weird inconsistencies with these paths on the Atlas. I completed this Asmarian Ranges map, and then I could go to this lofty summit, but for some reason this Trenches map appeared to open. Or that might have even been after the Woodland map. I remember I ran this Trenches map trying to get a connection to over here. But then I ran this Trenches map, but it didn't connect to this. But there's this path clearly showing that it does. It definitely did not. There's so many other weird things, like this map connects to here, but like these don't connect together. And this like somehow warps all the way up to this one. Like there's so many weird things, and then you'll have some paths like going through other tiles, but this one kind of looks like it, right? as if this could be a path from this map to this map. And sometimes that does happen. You'll have these paths cross over like another tile. I'm not sure if this one is exactly that case. I'm sure if I pathed around enough on here, I'd find some of this crazier nonsense. Here's one. This map, this marrow connects to this deserted, but it kind of looks like it connects to the spring, but it doesn't. There are also sometimes these random one-offs, like this deserted in here. You can only get to it through this canyon. There's this map that was only connected to this moment of Zen. I might be a little bit nitpicky there, but for the most part, it works. It feels weird when it doesn't. And here's another weird thing, like, why is there only one path into this lofty summit, but this goes all the way up into there? Like, weird, this stone citadel is like completely underneath a mountain. Procedural generation things. But I think I have pretty much summed up my feedback and critique on the league mechanic, the new ascendancies, the class, the druid stuff, the in-game. I guess I can leave you with this little guy right here. The armor break effect that is just floating out here for some reason. If you didn't know that was there, I'm sorry. But that is going to do it for me for today. If you have any feedback on the suggestions that I put forward or want to outline your own experiences with the league, definitely leave that in the comments down below. I am really looking forward to an in-game rework in PoE 2. But for me, it'll be back to PoE 1 until the next PoE 1 league, as well as some variety stuff. But with that, I'd like to thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, definitely hit the like button as it really helps the channel out a lot. Subscribe to make sure you don't miss more videos from me. If you'd like to help support my channel, please consider using the super thanks, the heart icon just below the video, or by joining to become a member. And I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.